breaking down everyday workplace issues and diagnosing the hidden sickness, not just the obvious symptom. Our hosts, James and Kobe.
Did we lose a patient? No, that's just my lunch.
Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm Kobe, he's James, and let's get started with a question. What trends should I pay attention to in 2026?
Yeah, okay. So I don't actually have a great answer to this starting out because Kobe, for some reason, wanted to keep me in the dark about the content of this episode, which usually means that he's found something that's going to irritate me and he just wants to make fun of me ranting about something. So I guess over to you, Kobe.
Yes, absolutely. We were talking about us wanting to kind of like do a bit of a look ahead for 2026. So when I was doing some kind of reading into kind of like what are some trends, what are some kind of concepts that would be kind of helpful for people to kind of be aware of or know kind of that there's some kind of like general conversation going on in different business communities and industries. And I came across some stuff that I just want your like I want our listeners to experience your just initial reaction to it. Like I think it's going to be great. Um,
Yeah, okay. Okay. I got to remember this is still filtered podcast, James, so
that's
semi professional at least.
Yeah, yeah. But one of the things I thought is that I'm actually really excited about talking about. So some of the things that we're going to get to probably kind of later on in the episode are going to be some things that I'm actually really encouraged for us to talk about with our listeners because the you and I are often talking about kind of the more kind of like under the surface, kind of like infrastructural or like hidden trends and or hidden kind of impacts and hidden risks a lot. And when we are talking to businesses or talking to organizations or prospective clients, we have to do a lot of like customer education around
Hmm.
like here's something that you've never really thought about that's actually putting you at risk, or here's something that's actually hurting your productivity but doesn't look, but you don't see it every day, that doesn't show up on the balance sheet or those kinds of things. And it's one of the, it's just one of the things we have to do a lot when we're engaging in conversations. Um, so what's kind of interesting is that some of the stuff that I found for us to talk about, some of the trends that are going to be a big part of 2026, are actually things that there's language around the stuff that we are talking about. It's almost like allows us to almost like potentially use some of this.
Kind of co-opt the language that is becoming more popular.
Yeah, or some like the kind of like the societal zeitgeist is now almost like it's kind of like caught up with some of the stuff that we've been talking about for the last four seasons, and they're giving some really targeted, some impactful language that ideally will allow for a more shared kind of vernacular when we're talking to potential clients or to kind of or other people that will allow for ideally a more of that shared conversation on the same page piece that will may allow for the customer education piece for us and our partners and all. And honestly, these are things that HR professionals and managers have been talking about, not just us for a long time.
Yeah.
Now actually might allow this to bubble to the top more because there's more almost like kind of momentum behind these terms that could actually really be helpful.
Okay.
Yeah. But before we do that,
Yeah,
um,
all right, here we go.
yeah, so while I was looking for those pieces, I came across some stuff that I'm reading them as like there are some buzzwords out there that are pretty awful that I think you're just gonna absolutely hate. So I really thought
Yeah, thanks.
we should talk about those first. All right, yeah, so there's some fun terminology existing in our workplaces that kind of that are things that people are Googling or that you'll see in, some like industry journals or people talking about them that I think are not great. I think you're gonna hate them. So let's just jump into a few, and I would love your unfiltered reaction to them.
Uh, yeah, okay.
All
My
right,
blood pressure is rising already, so let's just hit it and get into it.
all right. So the first one is the term coffee badging, which is when employees show up for optics, grab a coffee, chat, then leave, which is kind of like a reaction to the return to work, return to office mandates.
Coffee badging?
Coffee badging.
Okay. I get that you want to make return to work. I don't know how you make the return to work efforts dumber, but apparently we've succeeded. I mean, coffee. Okay, sure, whatever. Coffee badging. So you show up to the office, you get your coffee, you sign in, and then you disappear.
Maybe wave at your boss, probably,
Wave at your boss, make sure that you're seen, and then you hide in a dark corner
or
with your coffee, or you just leave.
yeah, I guess so.
As much as I hate the term, I kind of admire the guts, for lack of a for a more user-friendly term,
Right.
that it takes to actually kind of pull that off, because that's immediate grounds for discipline, right? You're showing up, you're logging in, you're waving, and then you're pissing off for the rest of the day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
coffee, so yeah, all right. I
I
hate it.
mean,
I
yeah.
legitimately hate it. I hate the term. I think it's idiotic. And if you're using, this is the thing. You said you got some of these from like industry journals, and these are things that are popping up in like
Yeah.
not just social media, because social media is dumb to begin with,
Yeah.
but it's actually showing up in written works,
Mhm.
in articles, and like
Yep.
this is the problem that with, well, I mean, I've ranted about this since, well, our first season, but before our first season, about how much I despise the guru culture.
Yeah.
That, especially the guru culture that kind of forms around social media, call it influencer culture,
Mhm.
of people who have zero substance, who just create these idiotic terms to make themselves sound and feel important.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Anyways,
No.
I'm, yep,
Yeah.
yep, okay, you got what you wanted. Congratulations.
Yeah. Oh, and they don't get better.
Great.
Yeah, no, but like you're right. I mean, there is like I have to wonder when I'm finding these that because again, some of these are like them trying to say there's a new thing going on there and it has a name, and that's something that if there is a new phenomenon, if there is a new way to talk about something that is really impactful.
Look, being labeling something
Yeah.
makes it easier for us to identify. There's nothing wrong with creating a term or finding a term that describes a certain set of actions,
Hmm.
behaviors, or instances that we can now point to and say, that thing that we are seeing is called this.
Yeah.
That is very helpful.
It is, and something that we look for when we're trying to say like there's a word to kind of identify, almost like shine a light on a hidden risk. Like
Yeah.
we love
But it feels like it's clickbait, right?
yeah, yeah.
And
I think
that's the problem. It's social media influencer crap, guru crap, clickbait.
well, and the thing is too is I wonder, like you said, like the guts that would take to do this. I wonder if people are actually doing this, or is this more of a like trying to feed the anxiety of managers, so they're reading these articles because oh my
Yeah.
gosh, is this something that my staff is doing? I need to look out
And
for this new thing.
that's exactly it. It is preying on the fears of leaders and managers who are going through these return to work orders, who probably didn't have any choice in the matter, that they're forcing, it's probably coming from higher ups who are
Hmm.
forcing everybody back to work. And you've got mid-level managers who have anxiety around, are people going to be upset? And influencers are really good at elevating people's anxiety, right?
Yeah.
That's how you get clicks. So I it's there's a difference between have people done this before and do people do this.
Right. Or yeah, or is it the idea of there's probably a very minor proportion of people that have done this, but let's
Yeah.
make everyone anxious about it, and pretend that it's a bigger thing than it is because that's going to drive more traffic to our articles or our sites or our social media
Yeah.
posts. All right. On that same note, here's the next one. All
I hate you so
right.
much.
Fauxductivity. And this is a term that is not exclusive to AI, but is kind of like associated with AI, but where teams kind of create almost like AI generated outputs to kind of show things that are moving along. They can make things happen fast. So there's more volume than there is value. But it's the idea of fake productivity.
Oh, just producing a ton of low quality,
Yeah.
high yield information to basically just an information dump to pretend that you've been working.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's the AI specific flavor of this Fauxductivity term. But I think there's that, but I think it's actually more of the performative productivity theater that we talked about for years, almost like trying to update that term. The term wasn't sexy enough, so now they're trying to
Yeah. I
sort
mean,
of
it's a stupid term, but I don't actually hate it as much as I hate the coffee bagging or coffee badging or whatever it
yeah.
is. Because
Yeah.
there is a lot of, I mean, if we're talking performative actions, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
There are a lot of performative actions in our organizations, right? There's a
Mhm.
lot of instances where people go through the motions of looking busy. So calling that fake productivity, faux productivity, it's not it's
Yeah.
not a term that I would use in a serious conversation, but I hate it far less than the first one.
Yeah, well, and the thing too is the idea of again, I question, are there people that are just getting AI to write something, not reading it, passing it in, and
Yes, because I don't remember what the context was, but I actually like look
yeah.
in an actual like newspaper. They
Mhm.
actually still have newspapers, people.
Oh.
Amazing.
Mhm.
Um, copied and pasted a sales ad that had the, you know how at the end of like a prompt, chat GPT will be like, do you want me to generate this
Right.
thing next? They had that at the bottom of their ad.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
copy and paste a chat GPT or any
Mhm.
AI response and submit it as a paid advertisement.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At least do some proofreading,
Right.
folks.
Okay. So then that brings me to another one that's called work slop,
Work
which is
slop.
which is low quality AI generated sludge and poor outputted materials that are just submitted that end up clogging down meeting the deadlines, but clogs your workflow and
Well,
create.
that's just being bad at your job.
And that's just it, right? I mean, because
Like,
AI
why
slop
do we need it?
is
Why do we need another term for people who suck at their job?
well, so I think it's because the term AI AI slop I've been hearing more
Yeah.
and more outside the workplace, where it's just the poor quality low AI generated garbage that's out there. That's kind of that's again, it's clogging up our social media, clogging up kind of all the kind of stuff like that. And this is just a work version of that. I think it is just that people generate, like I said, an article where someone generates something for a newspaper and then they just cut and paste and don't proofread it
Yeah.
and don't, yeah.
I bet you that's where some of these stupid terms come from, is they're AI generated terms for
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Somebody has the briefest notion of an idea for an article. They
Right.
toss it into ChatGPT with creating buzzwords and that'll be attention grabbing.
Yeah. No, no, you're right. Yeah,
So AI slop feeding all of the rest of this AI, all of
yeah.
this crap.
No, that's actually a really good point.
Well, and this is tangent time
Yeah.
again.
Hmm.
Um,
So we're here.
you opened the floodgates, man.
I did. Oh
This
yeah.
is your fault. So what drives me about the AI slop, the it can be such a useful tool. Like there's so many ways that like we have started to figure out ways to incorporate AI into some of what we do. But well, I mean, we had an entire podcast episode where we talked about it. Like we refer to when we're using AI, we refer to it as the intern
Right.
because we treat it like an intern, right? I am not going to send a client work that an intern has done without going through it with a fine-tooth comb, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
Because it may be a great intern, it may be, but that's the quality level that we're really dealing with at this stage, is that, you know, it can produce some really interesting ideas and some decent materials in very short order, but it is a tool. It's not the be all and end all that some
Mhm.
many people are making it out to being, and that a lot of people are starting to like this idea of, I can't imagine. I would be so flippin' angry if
Mhm.
I had staff members just submitting AI prompts to
Yeah.
me when I'm asking for content, when I'm asking for something to be done. Now, if
Right.
they want to use AI to help them to frame out what it is that I've asked for and how they may go about creating that,
Hmm.
cool.
Yeah.
That is a reasonable use. But if you're handing me AI responses that have not been vetted, validated, or even edited,
Hmm.
I'm going to be pissed. And that's a
Well,
disciplinary action.
agreed. Like one of the things that like we kind of go into organizations and when we're helping rebuild their internal infrastructure to kind of stabilize them and allow them to scale. One of the things that we do is we teach a lot of we teach a lot of the kind of the key staff how to maximize their productivity using AI.
Yeah.
So like, we because again, the overworked HR professionals, we're like, hey, let's create like a custom GPT for you so you can actually like, start to create more robust job descriptions using a set format and these kind of pieces like that. So they're not so you're able to actually like, create the output based on very careful, prompt engineering and crafting and then looking for or the ability to kind of have them reviewed and for kind of quality assurance. But it
Yeah.
allows us to build capacity in the organizations by giving them by like walking them through how to use these tools. Like I had staff in one of the organizations that I'm working with right now that wanted to figure out a way to measure something that their clients are experiencing, but there's no tool or no process. So we worked through with a couple different AI tools to kind of like try and like deconstruct and break down and look for kind of trends kind of across the province, kind of across like kind of North America, to looking first what are things that we're missing, and we're able to create a
Mhm.
really effective, almost like it was just a simple like intake checklist, but something that would really spoke to the need where before there was nothing that existed. And this was a newer staff that wasn't used to being able to building new tool or building new things for their job. They're used to just things being handed to them. So building that capacity in them, letting them, work through it, and letting them a few different approaches, a few different models, and then testing it. That builds real capacity in staff for productivity, rather than just saying, here's just something that I didn't even read. Let's go with that.
If you have a volume of repetitive tasks,
Mhm.
not even repetitive, but tasks that you are required to do regularly, like the example with the HR person, that's a really good use because you can set parameters around what it is that you're doing. You can create that fence. Because
Mhm.
the problem is, and I think where a lot of people go wrong is that they'll just use like like the free version, and they'll throw a random prompt in and they will take whatever it
Yeah.
generates. And when it pulls from, like, I mean, the other piece is that these large language models are pulling from data from across the internet. It's not evaluating what is right and wrong.
Right.
It's pulling all of this information in. So unless you have clear parameters around what you want, what you don't want, how it's to be structured, and create those rules of engagement, you're going to be getting low quality, what was the term? Slop?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So. All right, so I got one more that I want to talk about, and then let's talk about some of the things that are moving in the better direction. So the last one of these terms I want your reaction to is bare minimum Mondays, where employees pace themselves after long weekends where they
That's
feel.
Monday. It's just called Monday. Nobody's productive at 8:30 on a Monday morning. Everybody's takes yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Again, fear mongering. This is
yeah.
the targeted towards the to mid-level, maybe senior managers who are worried that their employees are milking them for everything they've got and everything's a fight and everything's a battle and I have to be on top of people all the day. What was it?
Bare minimum Mondays.
Bare minimum Mondays.
Yeah, yeah. I think
Here's
how
the
it.
okay, no, I'm not done. Here's the other thing that drives me nuts with the bare minimum Monday crap is that in many jobs, you are paying people to do the bare minimum. If the minimum that is required to keep your job is not enough, then raise the standards.
Right.
Right? People are always going to do the least amount of work for the most amount of money.
Mm,
Businesses are want people to do the most amount of work for the least amount of money. Those two
mhm.
expectations are in conflict all the time.
Right.
Everybody in their role, they are going to look for ways to do the minimum that they can to keep their paycheck, not get fired, and maybe if this is in line with their expectations and goals, maybe they will put in the extra effort because they want a promotion. But if people are doing Here's this drives me nuts. If people are meeting the expectations of the job,
Right.
if they're doing the bare minimum and the bare minimum isn't good enough, then that's your fault because you've set the bare minimum too low.
Yeah. Yeah. I did laugh when I read this one because like 'cause, like the full kind of description is like the employees pace themselves after like a burnout or a long weekend, and that it's a sign of low energy and weak connection to purpose. And say no, I think it's actually just people.
I think it's just called Monday.
Yeah, I think people just are less productive on Mondays in general,
I
and
am a fair like in terms of like within the context of Roman 3, what we do,
Mhm.
the fact that I have a job with purpose that I love, that I find fulfilling, that I am enthusiastic about, that I want to succeed because I mean this is our livelihood, this is our business.
Mhm.
I show up Monday morning tired and I need 2 cups of coffee before I'm productive. That doesn't mean that I have not connected to the purpose because that is like it's just yes, okay. Let's move on because I can rant more, but I don't know that that's necessarily what people want to hear.
All right, so let's change gears a little bit. And so there was one more term that at first I didn't like the term, but then when I kind of dug into the concept, I was like, you know what, there may be something here. Because again, we don't like buzzwords that's just repackaging old things like Mondays as something that's new and scary,
Yeah.
or that's trying that it's designed to
I'm
drive
surprised they didn't call it the Garfield effect.
right.
Okay. No, I will
Something
leave that alone now.
or something that's trying to drive traffic to like, like websites by kind of like capitalizing on people's fear and anxiety.
Yeah.
Though like because again, I was wondering if we were going to see a new term is time renting where your employer pays you money for your time.
Yeah, it's called a job.
Yeah,
Amazing. We've reinvented the world.
but the thing is that when there's a term or again a shorthand or shared language that helps identify threats or or shine a light on an actual systemic issue that has long been ignored. That's the kind of stuff that you and I are a lot more supportive of because again, we do need to, there's so much stuff that is just status quo, that is just, again, unseen beneath the surface that is so dangerous
Yeah.
that or are signs that of areas of weakness or areas of risk. Um, and we're going to get into those in a minute, but there's kind of one that kind of bridges it. It's not a term that I love, but I kind of think it gets to an actual good point, which was called career cushioning. Not a great term, but it's about even engaged employees that are there for kind of purpose or like that, or actually kind of connected to the work. They quietly prepare a backup plan, whether this is increasing their networking, focusing on skill building, because of the uncertainty in their leadership or in their organizational culture.
This is yes, okay. So yeah, I don't love the term,
Yeah.
but this is a legitimate thing. If the worst should happen and the organization that I'm working for downsizes and I get laid off, well, I still need to feed myself and my family. So I'm going to make sure that I have some sort of backup plan that I've been, refreshing my network, that I've been, yeah.
Mhm.
So I
Yeah.
don't see any problem with what is happening. I think it's actually a healthy thing to do.
So there are a lot of people that love the work that they
Hmm.
do. Like again, we see this in kind of like the mission-driven work that organizations that we work with, whether that's in the nonprofit sector or the private sector or kind of whatever it is, even in government. People that are like motivated by the work, by the client services, by the impact, by the kind of the nature of seeing, of moving, of seeing, of helping people or moving along progression or whatever it is. And they realize though that they're there for the job, but if they don't love working for the company because it's the state
Yeah.
there's uncertainty in leadership or uncertainty in the culture, they are engaged doing a good job because they're there for the work. But they also are smart enough to know that work doesn't only exist at this workplace. So if I can find an organization that gives me the same work fulfillment,
Yeah.
but also gives me a better leadership and better culture, I'm going to look for those.
Well, and we know that people, the one of, if not the biggest motivator, one of the biggest motivators for people to look for new employment is their direct manager or supervisor,
Absolutely.
right?
100%.
So this is why, like we've been talking for years about how critically important it is to train your supervisors, to train, to provide good, solid management skills to people who are responsible for others so
Yeah.
that they understand how do you engage with people in a professional and a meaningful way? How do you build trust? How do you build rapport, relationships? How do you show appreciation and recognition? How do you provide people with the professional autonomy that they need to be able to do their jobs? All of these elements from a management perspective are part of what goes into creating an employee experience. And
Mhm.
if you've never given any thought, time, or energy into investigating or understanding how what people actually experience in their day to day, they may be wonderful employees who are dedicated to the vision, the mission of the organization, and who are actively engaged in the work. But if their manager is inconsistent, if the rules are applied inconsistently, if they are not treated with respect, if they're not shown appreciation,
Mhm.
you're going to lose them.
Yeah.
It's not just, you cannot rely on the work to do the work of engaging and supporting your staff. That has to happen by managers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we see this in like even like really technical like science and high tech and those kind of pieces where people are there for like they're there for like the engineering, they're there for like playing with the toys, they're there for like how fun the work actually is.
Yeah.
But it's often that has to make up for often when the culture's bad. So that actually so that point let's build on that as we move into kind of these I've got four trends
Okay.
will actually answer the question, what trends should I pay attention to in 2026? These four trends we're going to talk about for the rest of this conversation are actually the answer to that question. The first half of this episode was not, hey,
Was Kobe just wanting to make me mad? So, congratulations. If you're just
let's let's be clear.
direct your anger towards him, because I will be.
The first part of this episode was really just for me and my own amusement. Now let's actually get into the actual question. Um, But building on what you just said, the first one I want to talk about is a term, or sorry, is a term that I think is a really helpful trend for us to be able to again have this shared conversation and this shared dialogue with organizations to identify risk. Is the term culture rot, which is the slow decline of a company's internal health due to failure of leadership to
Yeah.
trust employees or adapt to modern needs.
You can have incredibly dedicated people who are very good at their job, who are very passionate about the work that they do, who
Mhm.
are effective in the role and are crushing it. And by every metric that you measure,
Yeah.
they are a star employee, and it looks like they're not going anywhere is because they present as being actively engaged in the work. They find the work rewarding and fulfilling. So from a how we often how most organizations would evaluate risks around turnover, they would show up as pretty low risk.
Mhm.
But if your employee experience is not maintained or is not good, if your managers are not trained, if they're not consistent people, if there's one thing you do, just just be consistent. Even if you're consistently bad, it's better than being inconsistent. But try to be at least consistently good.
Yeah.
Um, like
So
these things do like it is like a slow poison.
Yeah. So the thing that this makes me think of immediately, is again, I love that this term is now out there, and someone else other than us is talking about this because we talk
Yeah.
about this in a
We are
lot
now
of
going to be able to use culture rot as a term that
right.
will
Yeah.
describe it. Yeah.
Absolutely, because we did an episode I think in season two, and then I was on a podcast a little last year called "Dear Corporate Love Stories" with a friend of ours, Becky Kate, and in this episode I talked about the concept that we refer to as using policies as weapons.
Yeah.
The idea of again like weapons of retaliation, weapons of control, those types of things, and weapons of oppression. And this is to me that what that culture rot is that when you are weaponizing policies and you're punishing staff for the actions of a few. And again,
Hmm.
and when I was on Becky's podcast, we talked about this a lot of we see this with corporate retails. A lot of corporate retail suffer from culture
Yep.
rot because again, they're weaponizing policy or they're removing almost like they're creating an us versus them with management and employees or stores and corporate or whatever it is, and they're not realizing that this is just the slow decline of the company's internal health. It's rotting from the inside, but they think that it's normal when it's not, and it's actually extremely risky.
And they're the most clear example I have ever seen in my life actually came as a consumer, not as a consultant. I
Right.
was in a retail store around Christmas time, a year or so. I don't know if it was last year or whatever. And an employee was finishing their shift. The manager who was waiting on me at the teller had to stop waiting on a customer so that they could inspect the employee's bag before they left
Mhm.
because probably somewhere at some point there was a couple instances of employees stealing from the retail store. Yeah, not a good thing. So,
Mhm.
what did the company decide to do? They instituted a policy that required every single employee on every shift before they leave has to have their personal belongings inspected by the manager. It was jarring to me as a consumer to watch this happen in real time. It was jarring to me as a professional in this industry to see this type of. And anyways, I ended up I wasn't able to engage too much because not the right setting, and my wife would have been absolutely mortified if I had been
Yeah.
myself in that situation.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
like
Yeah.
it's weaponized. That is such a clear example of a policy that has been weaponized to hurt other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And to me, it's when we start using policies to protect the organization from employees, or we start again, we want to like I told a story, I can't remember if it was in what podcast it was, it might be the one about weapons policies as weapons. We talked about someone misused a company car. So like one employee in this internet in this this like multinational organization across a few different countries, one employee used a family car to go on vacation. So all employees that had access to a work car were had immediately had all of any kind of like benefits of that taken back because one
Yeah.
employee, instead of punishing that one employee, it punished all employees, like hundreds of employees. And again, these types of things are signs of the culture rot.
Yeah.
We see this so obvious in these large corporate multinational organizations. But I mean, and again, retail is notorious for this too. But this is one that I think
What
that
it shows is a complete lack of respect for your workers,
yeah, but
right? Because people,
it's
go ahead.
poison. It's a slow death, like you
It
said.
is.
Yeah,
Yeah. It's a poison pill that you have intentionally or unintentionally entered into your organization.
yeah,
And it's felt by people and it is remembered.
yeah. Now, what's great is the next one I want to talk about is almost like when companies having incorporated these policies as weapons, like these weapons of oppression, weapons of retaliation, weapons of control. how they trying to make up for it is something that we hate, which is performative like perks.
Yeah.
But the term that is actually gathering some steam now is again this trend is called anti-perks, which are superficial office benefits like free snacks or like pool tables in the break room that employees are now seeing it as actually being negative because they realize that they're trying to buy off
Yeah.
the employees to to mask the systemic issues like unpaid overtime, lack of flexibility, weaponized policies, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Anti-perk.
what falls into it, I mean, we've talked about unlimited PTO
Mhm.
before. And this is what comes up to me for me as an anti-perk frequently is the way that many companies institute a unlimited PTO sounds really good, right? It sounds like it is just a wonderful benefit. But then they pile so much work on top of people or make such restrictive actions. I mean, how can you restrict something that's supposed to be unlimited?
And the thing too is that what I like is that by the idea of the anti-perk is that employees are now collectively talking about they see through these little
Yeah.
performative benefits. Like because we've been railing about pizza parties and again like against like a free snack.
Probably in our first episode.
Yeah, like we've been talking about this, yeah, for the last 4 years, but like even before the podcast, this is something
Yeah.
that we would rail against. And then, employee of the month is all these performative efforts that are,
Performative engagement is
yeah,
how we or started talking about it.
yeah, exactly. And that again, now the workforce is saying, okay, we all agree that this is not working. These are anti-perks. You're trying to make up for how bad the job is, how unflexible the job is, how overworked we all are.
You
And
want to do something that will actually help us? Look at workload. You want to do something that will actually help us? Teach my manager not to be a jerk, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
you want to provide a perk? Provide me with a space that I can actually work in, that I don't dread, that
right.
doesn't slowly destroy my soul.
Yeah. Well, and that's just it. Like, I mean, because like again, we one of the things that we often do when we go into organizations is we actually look at what are some of the again, we say performative solutions, but I think anti-perks works really well too.
Mhm.
What are the anti-perks that are existing in these workplaces? Because they're so transparent, people see right through them and they're not fooling anybody and they're actually doing way more harm than good. So we often try to like address those ones, kind of say because again they're undercutting their message when they're trying because like sometimes the anti-perks aren't created out of maliciousness trying to hide something. It's
No.
the management team don't know any better. They think that free snacks is what will make employees happy because everyone loves food, but not realizing no, it's they want trained managers, they want consistent workloads, they want reliability in kind of their scheduling or whatever it might be that's making employees disengaged, unhappy, and dissatisfied.
Yeah.
Right? Going back to the whole 7x3 rule we talk about, in, I think every episode, um, is the idea of like these are the things that if you want to actually stop having things that don't make a difference with these anti perks, the 7x3 rule is how you actually can address the real things people are actually looking for. If you want to actually,
Address the core functions of your workplace through the lens of being competitive, sufficient, and equitable.
yeah,
If you can do that, you will transform your workplace. It is the reason why it is the basis for everything else that we do.
right. So if you're not too sure what we're talking about with the 7x3 rule, our last episode where we talked about practical psychology, we dug into what's called Hertzberg's theory, which was the
Mhm.
catalyst for us creating the 7x3 rule. That's a great episode if you want to if you want to catch up on what we're talking about when we say the 7x3 rule. But yeah, but I think the anti perks is a great term for us identifying the fact that employees see through the facade of what businesses are
Yeah.
trying to do to kind of buy them off, and it's not working.
Yeah, and I mean, I just want to jump on one point that you made because do, I am fairly harsh in my criticisms. Um, I think rightfully so. But I also don't believe that these things are done with malicious intent.
Right.
I believe that 99% of the time, these are authentic actions undertaken with the desired result being better work outcomes and a better work experience. The problem is that there's a disconnect between leadership and employee or the ground floor. And we get swept up in the influencer guru garbage
Mhm.
of you need to have unlimited PTO is the key to your success. So do this in this way. And, we get swept up in these ideas of what has worked in one situation. We can just, without investigating or really understanding what that is, we're going to try to copy that and place it into our workplace,
Mhm.
unedit it, and it blows
Yeah.
up in our face.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that creates consultant work slop. All
Yeah.
right. So the next one I want to talk about is again, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about with unlimited PTO, but it's called well-being washing, where organizations promote health and wellness initiatives, but it's really a PR effort, because organizations
Huh.
may provide these performance solutions, but don't actually provide meaningful support or sustainable workloads.
As far as the term goes, this is probably the one that I like the most.
Yeah.
The anti-perk isn't bad now that because but I mean, it's probably easier for people to connect to the anti-perk idea than the performative solutions that we've been using. So we'll probably end up using anti-perk language. But the well-being washing is an interesting one because it is since COVID,
Hmm.
there has been a significant recognition of the importance of maintaining wellness.
Yeah.
And many companies are starting to understand the importance, but they don't understand what it means.
Right.
And so the language that they use, again, I don't think this is done maliciously. I think this is done through ignorance in the true sense of the term of not knowing. So there's a lot of things that I think get put into place with really good intentions to try to support well-being, or at least I think the problem is that language and actions don't mesh,
Hmm.
right? So when you have a company that is very in their communications internally, externally, very much supportive of health, wellness, mental wellness, well-being, all of those terminologies, and yet fail to deliver
Hmm.
in any meaningful way to their employees, it feels like it's just a marketing exercise rather than a way of actually supporting people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, like I can't think of any organization that we've worked with since COVID that employee wellness hasn't been a top priority and something that we've been trying to find practical solutions for. And one of the things that people don't love when we go into organizations, like the leadership don't love, is we don't have a silver bullet for wellness for people. We say it really does require a lot of work, especially because like wellness is one of those things that's part of the 7x3 rules, one of those things that creates job dissatisfaction if it's not done competitively, sufficiently, and equitably. And one of the things that's been really helpful for us lately is one of the things that we've gotten a lot out of is some of the work we've done more recently in the nonprofit sector with impact organizations. Is we've gotten really used to living with the reality of trauma-informed approaches
Yeah.
to the workplace. And trauma-informed is kind of is again a very common term with like working with like high needs organizations that work with like people at risk and those kinds of pieces. But
Addressing societal factors around
exactly,
poverty, homelessness. Yeah.
exactly, yeah. So the thing that I find really interesting about the trauma informed approach is that idea of we are looking at kind of like the almost like context of of a person's unique situation is context to treat them equitably. And that's really kind of
Mhm.
how I've kind of like been able to merge this trauma-informed approach that's been worked with like frontline work to kind of like cascading it through the organization is using an individual situation as context to treat them
Yeah.
equitably is one of the things that allows us to kind of bring that more equitable pieces to the wellness. And that is not an easy thing to explain to a boardroom full of people when you're trying to talk about wellness because they want these silver bullets. They want, unfortunately, they want well-being
They
washing.
want one policy or one
Yeah.
program, or
Yeah.
they want a series of policies or programs
Yeah.
that are going to accomplish this
Yeah. That
massive undertaking.
yeah, that they can articulate very easily
Yeah.
because there is a lot of PR attached to wellness. Let's be like,
Well, not only PR attachment, like it is critical
yeah.
to maintaining productivity,
Mhm.
to retention, to like avoiding burn, like it mental well-being, our emotional, physical, and mental well-being have such a massive
Mhm.
impact on how we show up to
Right.
work.
Absolutely. But I mean, like, but the problem is that we see these C-suite teams that want a solution that will work for the guys on the floor, that will work for the folks out in the field, that will work for the office staff behind desks. They want something, they want one thing that will work for everybody
Yeah.
that they can just put in, not realizing that this idea of the trauma-informed approach is again the context of the uniqueness of a situation or teams to allow for them to be treated not equally but equitably
Yeah.
is how we have to approach wellness. And if we're not doing that, we are likely well-being washing.
Well, okay. So this may sound really stupid, but what just kind of popped into my head, it's the idea of even if you can get everybody to agree that they like pizza,
Mhm.
what they like on their pizza is going to be individual,
Right. No, yeah, yeah, yeah.
right? Like even if you could get people to agree that one particular thing is
Hmm.
going to make a difference,
Yeah,
the way that plays out still is going to be individualized,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
You can have everybody agree that, yeah, let's have pizza for supper. Try getting them all to agree on the same toppings on all of the pizzas across the entire organization and
Yeah,
keeping everybody happy.
yeah, yeah. You're right. So I do think that this is something that is a great term to well-being washing for the idea of, again, it's a performative solution to wellness is kind of what is kind of railing against. Because the thing too is like, especially when companies talk about wellness, they talk about this one thing, this pizza that they're providing, but then they're also having managers that are inconsistent, managers that are untrained,
Yeah.
unsustainable workloads, all those other kind of pieces too. But they've got a treadmill in the break room,
Yeah.
so
But instead of making the pizza really great, they just give everybody a cheese pizza.
Hmm. Right. But yeah, but I mean,
Anyway,
this idea
I might
of
be going too far with it.
I think so. I'm
Yeah.
hungry now. That's the problem.
Yeah.
But again, it's this idea of again, we talked about this with performative solutions. We talked about this in a few different episodes that we talked about wellness, and so I like the idea of well-being washing being a term that we can now collectively talk about more that might actually grab hold of people because there's a bit of a momentum behind it, which I'm hoping will really build into 2026.
Yeah.
So the last one I want to talk about is an emotional paycheck. Now, this is the non-monetary things like recognition, purpose, strong relationships that employees have, and that are increasingly more important, and that they're being prioritized alongside their salary. So it's not replacing their
Mm.
salary, but it's all the cultural benefits, all the job satisfaction pieces, going back to Hertzberg's theory that we talked about in our
Yeah.
last episode. It's realizing that these things are the emotional paycheck that are just as needing to be prioritized as the actual paycheck. Because again, like we talked about kind of going back before, the idea of organizations, need to, you know, the idea of like paying people to sit through these organizations that do not have great cultures, like again, the culture rot one, this idea
Hmm.
of this is the counter to the culture rot is these emotional paycheck pieces.
Yeah. I mean, I don't necessarily hate the term.
Hmm.
What jumps out at me as a potential pitfall, though, is that, and I think this already happens to some degree. I
Hmm.
think you would, if a term like this really gains momentum,
Yeah.
I think the risk we run is in people trying to account for the emotional paycheck and total compensation.
Right. Well, I think the where the idea of the emotional paycheck should really gather a lot of momentum is actually going to be in the middle managers. Because I
Mm.
mean, middle managers have very little impact on the total compensation. Those are usually done through, right? So this is
Yeah.
like, so this
Okay.
is something that the middle managers might be able to take more, like they can provide a much larger emotional paycheck than maybe other middle managers in other organizations, that kind of piece too, right?
Ah,
Maybe it's a matter of tackling the anti-perks, or maybe it's a
yeah.
matter of trying to combat the well-being washing and actually trying to actually like truly recognize people, trying to help them connect their jobs to purpose, helping them build stronger connections and stronger relationships and better team cohesion and be more consistent and all those kind of pieces like that. I think that if a middle manager wanted to take away from this episode is that they should be the champions to increase their employees' emotional paychecks.
Yes. Okay. And I think as a manager, do not use that term with your employees,
No.
right? As a
No.
way of understanding
Yeah,
the
that's right.
emotional perks, yes. But
Mhm.
that is not language that is going to resonate
Yeah.
with staff. If you say, and here's your emotional paycheck, I'm doing X, Y, and Z for you, it's going to come across as incredibly condescending, even though I know, again, it's not meant that way. It may be very authentic, what you're trying to do, but perception shapes reality. So
Mhm.
let's try to get ahead of it and let's try to not present that opportunity for misunderstanding.
No, that's a good point. Okay, so this has been a really, really good conversation. And I got what I wanted out of ticking you off anytime.
Yeah, yeah,
So this
thanks.
was this was
Sure.
even better episode for me. I hope you listening enjoyed it, but I really got a lot of this episode. But yeah, just as a little bit of a recap, I just kind of want to reference the fact that there are a lot of buzzwords out there that are written to prey on, fears of managers and executives and stuff like that that are really trying to drive traffic to kind of clickbaity articles that really are either relabeling of old things, or just trying to poke at your anxieties about how your staff are taking things away from you. They're almost like trying to cause more division in our
Yeah.
workplace.
If it's setting you up against your employees,
Hmm.
it's probably a performative or a bad solution.
Yeah. But there are some things that some language that is really helpful for us to kind of have this shared, vocabulary when it comes to working, to be able to understand things and identify things better. Because we can't identify issues, it's really hard to resolve them. And ideas like the current the culture rot as a good term for
Hmm.
us to recognize the slow decline
Yep.
of
I
our
like that.
company's internal health is a helpful term about how there are some things that are poisoning our workplaces, and it usually is about the erosion of trust and the kind of and the inconsistency of leadership tends to be a big part of that. Weaponizing policies. Anti-perks is a good term for the superficial office benefits that employees understand are actually negative because they mask systemic issues. Well-being washing as the idea of these more PR approach to mental health initiatives that actually have very little impact and don't actually provide the support they need or actually address things like overworked staff or inconsistent managers or all these other kind of pieces that actually are what really take down people's wellness. But realizing too that the idea of the emotional paycheck being the fact that there is a lot of reasons why people stay in organizations, and that the idea of things like recognition and purpose and strong relationships are a lot of those pieces that make a big difference when we're trying to actually figure out, is this where I want to stay? And is this an added piece to my overall salary that I love my job and I love my paycheck, or
Mhm.
those kinds of things are going to be helpful when you're trying to look at long-term employee retention and organizational growth. So I hope that we see more conversations around culture raw, anti perks, well-being, washing, and emotional paychecks as we move into 2026. As I do think that this is going to be the point that we need to make sure we're on the same page. We're talking about things in a consistent way, because these performative solutions that are out there are what is kind of causing this rot or this poisoning of our organizations, and we have to start putting a spotlight on it if we're actually going to resolve it. All right. So that about does it for us. For a full archive of the podcast and access to the video version hosted on our YouTube channel, visit roman3.ca/podcast. Thanks for joining us.
For more information on topics like these, don't forget to visit us at roman3.ca. Side effects of this podcast may include improved retention, high productivity, increased market share, employees breaking out in spontaneous dance, dry mouth, aversion to the sound of James's voice, desire to find a better podcast.